Good morning, everybody. This is John, and this is the NCGA Merschman Seeds Weekly Weather Briefing, February 17th, 2018. Well, what's going to be driving our weather this week is this system we've seen, this pattern we've seen for quite some time now, this polar vortex up to the north. You know, if you read my post this week, it's sort of complicated, but the sudden stratospheric warming. Basically, the stratosphere is the layer above the troposphere, so that's the stratosphere up here, and here's the troposphere where we live. And when that warms, like it did over the last week, it split this polar vortex and it pushed it down to the south. You can see along the North Pole up here, it's actually warmer than normal, and then we have these colder than normal temperatures here. Now, I'll tell you, be a spoiler here, I'll tell you what it's going to do. What it's going to do is going to keep it persistently cold over the far northern part of the Corn Belt. But then it's going to put a boundary, a very tight boundary, and along that boundary, a gradient between warm and cold. We're going to have some action this week as far as precipitation. In addition to that, you can see that we do have some streaming moisture from the Pacific. That's an ingredient for heavy rain, not just low-level moisture from the Gulf, but streaming mid and upper-level moisture from the Pacific. Before I get to the forecast, let's look at over the last week. Well, we had that boundary was actually further off to the east. So last week it was sort of here, and this week it's going to be here. But last week you can see it produced some pretty heavy rain, 2 inches or more. And these areas here, 3 to 5 inches, and even some spots. And, you know, Ohio is just, within the Corn Belt, Ohio has just been really wet now, going back all the way till spring. Parts of Indiana as well. So it's been quite wet over the eastern Corn Belt. And then over the rest of the area, a bit of snow over the last week, but much lighter liquid amounts. Now this is the current water equivalent. I'm looking at that very closely for the prospects for spring flooding. Now I would characterize this as there are some bands of heavier water equivalents. These are over 2 inches, over 3 inches. But at the same time, there's a lot of holes in here and sort of not much at all. So if we get some milder weather in there, that's going to erode, and I think the risk is more localized to some tributaries rather than on the main stem rivers, such as the Mississippi. Now, having said that, the rain we had over the last week, we did have a lot of response on rivers and tributaries within the Ohio River Basin. Wanted to show that to you. Also, the lower Mississippi, I know we have a lot of growing regions right along the Mississippi. Right now, I think we need to keep an eye on that as well, because there's going to be a lot of flow coming in from the Ohio. Also some heavy rain in that area, but the yellow boxes are indicating high but still within bank. Right now, I don't see any real significant flooding, but I do think we're going to see some significant rises on many rivers along the Ohio, especially the lower Ohio, and then south of the confluence of the Ohio and the middle and lower Mississippi. Now, temperatures over the last week, yellow is above normal, green and blue are below normal. Look at that boundary right in here. The heaviest rain is on the warm side of that boundary. Now, we do need some more rain in areas, especially brown, orange, and red. So most of Missouri, especially the eastern part of Missouri, most of southern Illinois, and most of southeast Iowa, smaller parts of Indiana. We also need it in part of the upper Corn Belt as well. So keep that in mind. Also, outside the primary Corn Belt, Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. So this week, we're going to tighten up that gradient, like I mentioned, and here we go. This is the temperature over the next 5 days. That boundary lifts up a bit to the north, and that's going to say that that axis of heaviest rain is also going to be a little bit further to the northwest. And here we go. This is going to be, depending on where you're at, as early as Sunday, but most likely most areas Monday through Wednesday. And it looks like we could get a soaking rain in some areas that need it quite a bit. Other areas are going to miss out. So let's look at that a little bit closer here. Here's the drought monitor. Well, look at Missouri. This is going right through the area that needs it the most, southern Illinois, right through the most. So we're going to see some pretty good improvements in this area right here to soil moisture that really needs that rain. This is indicating 3 inches or more, even 4 inches in spots. It might get parts of southeast Iowa, but that's not a sure bet. That could be maybe an inch. But I think that's a little bit iffy in this area because you're in the outside of that gradient. It's tapering off very quickly, and not much at all over the north area of the Dakotas. Not much, well, much at all. Now, parts of Texas and Oklahoma also very needed rain and get it. So this, even though there's going to be some issues with the rivers in here, this is going to be aggravating the flooding in this area. I think there's a beneficial amount role with this as well, and that's going to mean recharge of water resources in those areas. Now we get into the period of the 6 to 10 day, 22 to 27th. Not much change here. That boundary still in the general area. And then as we get into the 11 to 14 day, this is more of a benign type west to east flow, and temperatures rising above normal over the eastern and central Corn Belt. Now if you're up in the North and South Dakota, Nebraska, Minnesota, North Iowa, you're going to be a little bit frustrated with this cold temperatures because you're going to be under that polar vortex circulation much more than the central and east. Okay, precipitation. Here's week 1. I think I talked about that pretty good. Chance of the flooding issues on the main stem and tributaries, but other than that, a beneficial rain in most areas. And here's week 2. That boundary's still there. I don't think you can get too hung up exactly where this is at for week 2. It could just as easily be in here. But again, I think from a flooding situation, the Ohio is going to be the area that is basin and its tributaries could get the most significant rain. Here's another way to put it. Here's your really dry soils in brown, and look at that heavy rain right over that. So also some heavy precipitation on the 19th in this area here in the form of snow. So I think that's the forecast. Pretty good chance of showers and even some thunderstorms this week. Beneficial in many areas, but we are going to have some aggravations due to some heavy rain in spots as well. Hope you all have a great week. Been a long time. I'm in St. Louis. Been a long time since I've seen a soaking rain, so I'm looking forward to watching it rain. Have a great week.